Okay. Let's see. Is the mic working? Hello. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. Let's see. Is this working? Because sometimes it doesn't. Okay. Okay. So let's see. Is this working? Is the camera working? Okay. So let's see. Is this working? Okay. That's a bit too loud. That's a bit too loud. Okay, I like that. That's pretty good. Okay then. Let's get started. So this isn't going to be anything big, really. I'm just going to kind of go through the movies I've watched during April. This might be kind of boring for you because there's nothing really visually interesting about these live streams. I just kind of, just do them just because it's like 8 in the morning right now. Yeah, let's just get into it. So, first one is As Good as It Gets. Now, I don't really watch anything bad, surprisingly, this month. I didn't watch a single bad movie, which is, abnormal for me. I didn't watch that much this month. I kind of just, for the first half of the month, I just watched a lot of stuff and then I stopped. But As Good as It Gets is, it's decent, I think. I think it's a solid movie, overall. I really like Jack Nicholson in this movie. I think he gives a solid performance, and he's just solid in this movie. There isn't really much to say about this film, and I will, try more with the other ones on why I like them and what's so good about them. But for this one, really, there's not much to say. It's just kind of an entertaining ride. So yeah, that's it. Okay, Daisies. Now this one is probably the most interesting on this list because, well, it's an experimental movie, and anytime you see experimental as like anything related to what the film is, it's going to be something crazy, and that was kind of what this movie was. It was felt somewhat like a drug trip at points, and it was a very, very entertaining movie. I really like the style. I really like the editing choices, the special effects choices. It all just gave off this very interesting, unique vibe that you can't really get from anything else, quite like this. And I think it tells a story somewhat, like unlike other experimental films. I think the problem with it is it doesn't tell the story very well. I feel like when it comes to the story overall and like what it's trying to convey, I feel like it's not as interesting. And I just feel like without the visuals and the fun special effects, it just becomes very dull because as when it comes to like what it really is as a whole and like what it's trying to be, it's not very interesting. I feel like it should just went all out and honestly not really cared about the story. I would have enjoyed that a lot more. Eraserhead kind of has a story. I feel like it's a good example because like Eraserhead, it kind of has a story, but there's like I feel like while there isn't exactly a point to tying it into with the visuals, I feel like, the story as a whole and like what it's trying to do is actually somewhat interesting. I feel like if you're gonna have a story, you kind of have to make it engaging and kind of have like, somewhat of a point to what it is. And honestly, I would have rather just had them had fun with the camera for like an hour and a half instead of doing this. So yeah, next one is Children of Men, which I found pretty enjoyable. I think overall, I think it was, well, not enjoyable. That is like the worst way to describe this movie. The more I think about it, sorry, this is not scripted at all. But Children of Men is, I feel like, an interesting concept, And while that's probably like the worst compliment you can give a movie, just saying that the concept was interesting. I mean, it really is this whole idea of like people, not deciding, like not being able to give birth to humanity and like what that would look like now. That's fascinating to me, I think. And seeing, what that would look like is, something to behold. I feel like the cinematography as well also is pretty solid in this movie. There's some really good shots. There's some great tracking shots. I love the way it looks. It really, it does a solid job at what it's trying to do. I feel like the problem movie really, I get it, maybe it was trying to say something, I just didn't really care about it all that much. But this movie doesn't really feel like it's trying to convey something. It's just like, oh look, here's this world, we're not going to really give you any commentary or anything like that, we're just gonna give you the story, which I guess is good in its own right. But I don't think that the way the story is told, the way it's portrayed, the way everything's portrayed is really good enough to warrant that. So it just becomes a solid movie that I probably won't ever watch again, and I have not much of a reason to come back to. It's just kind of ends up being good. So yeah, it's kind of unfortunate. The next one is The Tragedy of Macbeth. Now everything from here on out is at least like 4.5 stars and above. So, you know, that's pretty cool, I guess. But yeah, The Tragedy of Macbeth is, based on a Shakespeare play. And well, I'm not really familiar with most Shakespeare movies, or haven't really watched any of them, or haven't even rarely read any of his plays, just going into this blindly. Uh, I think I had a pretty good time for the most part. I absolutely adore the cinematography. It is some of the best of 2021 and some of the best of the 2020s in general. It's so beautiful. It's so gorgeous. Well, not really gorgeous is the right word to describe it, but it's really just, it's hard to explain. It has this really weird aura, this, mystical, weird, misty aura that honestly I feel like represents, or like, is able to behold this perfectly with the way that, Shakespeare's words are put onto the big screen. So I think that works brilliantly, in my opinion. Also, the Shakespeare dialect, for the most part, well, we will get to why and this is Shakespeare, and they wanted to make it like the play. But the problem with that, with the movie, is it just doesn't work as well, I feel like. I mean, it could work, but I just got so incredibly bored at some points where they would just go on and on and on. And maybe that's just a personal thing. That probably is a personal thing, to be honest. But I just did not like the way it was represented. I thought sometimes, I think there was one point where I fell asleep at it because of how needlessly dragged down, how needlessly boring it was. But it is a very interesting story. I mean, that is one thing I did kind of forget to say about it. The story of this whole idea of this guy, trying to become story makes it the most interesting out of these four movies, and just does a great job of keeping you engaged for the most part. Now, next one is actually the first R-rated movie I've ever seen in theaters. I've seen R-rated movies before that were released in the same year, but I don't think I ever actually caught one in theaters until today, which is Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was probably the first A24 movie I have absolutely loved. I really, really had a phenomenal phenomenal time with this film. I think at its core, really, it's about a family getting back together, yet they hide it with all this action and entertainment and, fun, that it's like so amazing. And you wonder how they were able to, make such a fun, great movie, but also make it about this family, trying to get back together and not and, you know, in a way good at the end. And I like that about this movie. I feel like the action is it's fun, it's entertaining, you know, it's energetic, it's, full of life. Sometimes it felt like the Matrix, but like, the good parts of the Matrix, in my opinion, instead of the hollow parts of it. And then of course there's just this, there's it's hard to you can't really go on a ton about this movie. It's just a great movie that's very fun, and yet at the same time it's all about bringing this family together, about bringing them, closer and making them remember why they love each other so much, why they care about one another. The whole thing with the husband was great. Just it's a movie about appreciation of family. It's like the perfect Thanksgiving movie to watch, which sounds weird because it's an A24 movie, but it truly is like the perfect Thanksgiving movie you could really ever sit through. So, like, this is just a fun time. There's nothing else to say about it. It's such a blast. It's such a great movie to watch. It's just the perfect, movie that, like, if you're trying to get, your friend a little bit deeper in a film or something along those lines, and, you want to watch something that's like, they'll enjoy, but also something that's like, well made. This is like one of the perfect movies to do that. It's such a enjoyable, fun ride, but at the same time, it's, there's so much more to it. Not really, but not really, but it's like, I guess when it comes to, the way it's made, the way it's stylized, there's style there, there's flair there, there's, dialogue there that's really enjoyable. There's characters that are really funny and that are well acted. It's just a fun time that happens to be made by a very good director. So, yeah. Next one will be Before Sunset. Now I've watched 2 out of 3 of the movies in the Before trilogy. I have to watch Before Midnight. But Before Sunset was honestly everything I loved about Before Sunrise, which we'll get to soon. Except for, it's in a different time period. It's new, it's fresh. Honestly, this might be one of my favorite movies ever made. I haven't put in my top 50 yet on Letterboxd, but I'm considering doing that because it's so good. It is so good. Like, it's clearly just like, is it kind of a rehash? Yeah, but it's the best rehash you could possibly have, in my opinion, for a sequel, because it takes these people that haven't, known each other, haven't really talked to each other for a very long time, and they finally get to meet each other again at an older and different place in their lives. And that's something that I feel like gets overlooked about this movie is, how it's this movie, well, these 2 people who met one time and kind of just catch up on each other and just talk about new things, talk about different things. And the thing is that they're just conversations, and yet somehow they are some of the most entertaining movies I've ever watched in my entire life. I am so intrigued and invested into these conversations, so much so where I feel like I'm in these conversations with these people, and it really, you really enjoy it, you really love it. And it's not really a movie that's like flashy or like has like some amazing jaw-dropping cinematography or, absolutely, beautiful editing or anything like that. It's just a movie that's really well made with these 2 really great people, 2 really great actors, with a phenomenal script. And that's all they really needed. And it shows that with a movie, you don't need much. All you just need really is talent. And I love movies that are able to show that. Next one will be Dead Poet Society, which I mean, everyone says it's amazing, and it is amazing. There's no debating. I don't know how you can't at least give this a 4.5. How can you not like love this movie? There's so much to love about it. I think the main thing that makes this film so good is how the way it tackles the idea of, in a way, following your dreams, which sounds so corny and is in a way, but it takes a way more serious approach than I've seen any other film tackle this subject. It takes it in a way darker route, actually, and it shows that people that don't really truly do what they want to do, they'll never be happy. And that this idea that I mean, I'm not really describing it very well, am I? But I mean, you know what? I'll put a spoiler warning, whatever. So if you have not seen Dead Poet Society, click off this or whatever. I mean, let's be honest, no one's really watching this. But my point still stands. Anyways, going into it, of course, there's this whole great, it's a great cast, right? Everyone's great. I really love Robin Williams. I really love the entire cast of kids. They all do great. They all feel like kids. They all feel like children. However, the main standout of this movie by far, is this whole theme and idea that they will never this idea that, this whole heartbreaking philosophy of like not being able to, follow what you want to do. And this whole idea of forcing kids to, live through the way you want them to is horrible. And how, as corny as this sounds, trust me, it's not this corny in the movie. This whole idea of how they should do what they want to do. They should be able to follow what they want to do, regardless of what you think of it. And the way they portrayed it, especially with this kid that, decides to kill himself because he truly didn't want to do that, is heartbreaking, but at the same time understandable, because he might have been miserable for the rest of his life because he wasn't able to do what he wanted to do. And in a way, he died doing what he loved. With tale, it's a heartbreaking story, but at the same time, a motivational story. Once it comes to the end of it, it's hard to really explain this movie, because it's just something you gotta watch. It's something you have to see for yourself to really understand the greatness of it. Next one would be Before Sunrise. Favorite movie I watched this month. I mean, it's everything I've said about Before Sunset is basically the reason why I love this movie, except for, it happened to be the first one. So, and I like it. I don't really have a specific reason of why I like this movie more, besides the fact that I just do. They're both really on equal terms for me, and I just don't know what to say. It's just a movie where these two people meet, and they meet in such a natural way, by the way. Hour and 40 minutes, and it's amazing. It's the way they portrayed is so perfect. It's so phenomenal, and it's such a natural. That's the best thing about these two movies. They all feel natural and realistic, but also not exactly like, they don't try to be insanely realistic. They don't really try at all. It seems so effortlessly put together, It seems so real. It just feels like life. These movies feel like life to me, and that's what makes them so great. That's what makes them so phenomenal. And that it's gonna make me, want to maybe own them or something and rewatch them till the day I die. So yeah, that's gonna be it for every movie I watched in April. I'm really bad at outros, but bye, I guess. I don't know what else to say.